This is Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Today is the third installment of our three-course November series on holiday cooking and baking. Each week in this series, we focus on a different course. The first week was appetizers. Last week, we talked about main courses. And this week, finally, is dessert. Thanksgiving is a week away, and if your family's anything like mine, you are busy debating who's making what pies and whether pecan pie is a delicious must or a yearly disappointment. Or maybe your family doesn't follow traditional American Thanksgiving traditions. Maybe you've been baking something else this winter for family and friends. Well, we hope you can join our conversation this hour. What's your favorite dessert to serve this time of year? Give us a call at 800-639-2211 or send us an email to vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. But if you need ideas, we've got three folks here today with lots of them for you. First, Caroline Anders is the co-owner of Atlas Conchas in Randolph. Caroline and her husband sell Oaxacan-inspired treats, in particular, pan dulce like conchas. Welcome.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, very glad to have you. And we also have Anne-Marie Shea with us as well of Bonte Bakery in Montpelier. It's a gluten-free bakery that makes artisan breads and pizza crusts. Anne-Marie, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and we have, last but not least, Jeremy Gully, who joins us from Middlesex, where he's the lead bread baker at Red Hen Baking. Jeremy, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Caroline, your bakery is relatively new to the Vermont scene. You all were down in New York City and then moved up to Vermont. Why did you make that move?
Wow. Well, there were so many reasons. We chose New York City because it really is the center of so many emerging food scenes, and we really wanted to be able to pursue our love of pan dulce in that arena. And we had a fantastic first year, and so many wonderful things came out of our time.
Yeah, you were on a lot of lists and developed this whole Instagram community. A lot of people really loving your food, and then you're like, bye New York, I'm going to Vermont.
Yeah, well, I wish it was that simple. Yeah. I would say that the press that we got out of it was really just amazing and really special to us because we really believe in what we were doing and what we still are doing. And to have that level of recognition really meant a lot. Yeah. But I think the most meaningful thing for us that we got out of our time there was the support of our local community in Spanish Harlem and becoming a regular morning stop for so many of our longtime customers was really special. As to why we moved to Vermont, we kind of hit a wall where we were out of options to expand our bakery. When we first started making conchas, our goal was just to make these traditional Oaxacan pan dulces. But over time, we learned that there was a much bigger need for more artisanal breads made with higher quality ingredients. And we missed proper baking on, a stone surface. And so we were looking at all these different ways to expand and get back into those ancient techniques. And we just hit a wall because, the rent is so high and there are all these limitations for all of these buildings that are, over 100 years old. And so we ran out of space, we ran out of electrical capacity, and we just felt like we weren't able to really do all of the things that we wanted to do where we were. And that was happening around the same time that we were starting to see impacts from federal funding cuts to programs like SNAP that many of our regular customers depended on. And both the farmers markets that we purchased our ingredients from were struggling, and the farmers market that we sold bread at were suffering from these funding cuts, and we're having to cut back their hours significantly. And we just kind of realized that we would not be able to serve anyone at all if we couldn't keep our business afloat in those challenging times. Mm-hmm. So it was a very sad decision to leave, but it means that we're going to be able to keep doing what we love, and we're actually going to be able to expand in the ways that we want to. Mm-hmm. So I think it was the right decision, and we're really glad to be here.
And you moved from a very old building in New York to a very old building in Vermont, which I want to hear about more in just a moment. But first, Jeremy, you work at a place that has been a Vermont institution for a while now. Red Hen is a staple in Middlesex. What brought you to Vermont to work there?
Well, I had worked in Vermont previously, and my wife and I kind of bounced back and forth between Colorado and Vermont a little bit. But at some point when my wife was pregnant with our daughter, we decided that we really wanted to settle in Vermont. And I had been looking at that point to work at an artisan bakery and do artisan bread and really just get into it. So I had just by chance popped by Red Hen when we were on our way to visit the Rabins up in Marshfield. And it was kind of a destination, and they were lovely and welcomed us in. But I stopped by Red Hen and chatted and put in an application, and it worked out about a year later. And so that's really what brought me here, was to live here, but also to work at Red Hen.
And now you've been there 22 years, is that right?
Yeah, 22 years.
Real quick, is there a big difference between baking in Colorado at altitude and baking here? Does that change your process?
There can be. I think for like cakes and quick breads, it's a lot more drastic. You have to really adjust. When I was baking there, I was up in Frisco, Colorado, which is at 9,000 feet. So you do have to adjust those things. For like breads, not so much.
Yeah.
They're a little more resistant to any changes in altitude.
Yeah, they're tougher.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. And Anne-Marie, you are in the midst of a transition for your business too. I want to get to that, but first, can you tell us how it started out? Why did you decide to bake gluten-free bread?
Yeah, I had been gluten-free probably for at least 10 years before I even considered opening a bakery. And really it came out of wanting to make gluten-free bread for my son that he wouldn't be able to tell was gluten-free. And that challenge motivated me, I would say, and it motivated me to do all sorts of experiments and different things, and was incredibly dissatisfied with the gluten-free options that were out there at that time. I think this was probably at least 10 years ago. And the options are getting a lot better, but I would say still in our area, there aren't as many artisan gluten-free bakeries as I would love to see. But the motivation was really about making something my son couldn't tell the difference. And that was a really good challenge for me.
I had a relative visiting recently, and we went to a store to pick up some prepackaged sandwiches, and they accidentally bought a gluten-free sandwich, and the consistency of the bread, you could just tell, like it just like crumbled immediately. They were so frustrated. I was like, but we're in a state with so much good gluten-free bread. I'm so sad that this had to be the case. And I can imagine you have so many customers who are so excited to be able to eat good bread again.
Yeah, the most gluten-free breads that are out there are batter breads. And so it's almost like a cake-like batter, and the consistency is crumbly.
This
it doesn't
one looks
hold
spongy,
up. Yeah.
Kinda. Yeah.
And what we do is like a completely different thing. It's a lot more similar to what Red Hen does. We're shaping the bread. It's a dough. We're baking it in traditional deck ovens, all that. So it's just a completely different animal. Yeah.
Well, we're here to talk holiday baking. So let's get into that just a little bit. And if you have a favorite holiday baking recipe that you want to share or need some tips, you can call in at 800-639-2211. Since Thanksgiving's right around the corner, I'm hoping we can talk pies first, just for a minute, talk some pie crust tips. Are you a pie fan, Caroline? Do you make pies?
Oh, absolutely. I think pies are essential on the Thanksgiving table. I love to make pies and eat pies, and yeah, totally.
Okay, so what's the basis for your pie crust? Are you a butter person? Are you a Crisco person?
I love that question. I think that for me, the perfect pie crust is made with half butter and half shortening or lard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I
Half
know that that's
half.
kind of controversial. I know a lot of people love the all butter pie crust, but it's important to remember that butter does have a little bit of water content in it. Whereas if you go with shortening, such as Crisco or lard, that's all fat. It gives it more of a fine, powdery texture. But of course, the butter is essential for the flavor. So I like to go half and half.
Okay. Jeremy, do you have an opinion on this? I know you're a bread guy now, but did pastry at Red Hen for many, many years.
I generally just go with butter. I would say if I have access to some good lard, I will use it for sure.
Yeah.
And I like using it, and probably about 50-50. But I don't always have like good lard on hand, so I generally go with butter.
Does Red Hen sell pies at Thanksgiving?
We do, yeah. The pastry team is hard at work right now.
Yeah. Can you talk scale here? How many are you making?
Oh, let's see. It's been a couple of years since I've done it, but we'll do several hundred pies on like day before Thanksgiving. We do pumpkin and apple, and the apple we do both a traditional apple and then also a apple crumble with cranberries in it.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
So yeah, it's kind of a big push, and just trying to get them all through the oven is the trick.
Yeah.
in the time frame.
I think you need a lot of ovens.
Yeah.
Hey, Anne-Marie, do you have any tips for baking a gluten-free pie crust? Is this something you attempt every year?
Oh yeah, I would say pastry is probably, besides bread, one of my favorite things with gluten-free because of it's such a good challenge. And I'm definitely if I'm making gluten-free pastry at home, I'm going to use 100% butter. The only time I wouldn't is if I was going to do a vegan pie crust, and then I would probably use 50% shortening and 50% vegan butter. But otherwise, I'm definitely an all butter pie crust person. But as far as tips, gosh, there's so many good books out there. But yeah, mix up your flours. There's a lot of great gluten-free flours out there. Your pastry needs a lot of flexibility, so you want a flour that has a lot of flexibility, like a super fine sweet rice flour mixed with other, really lovely whole grain flours like oat or millet or buckwheat. Buckwheat. That's what I do. You need a lot of pliability, and gluten-free flours don't have that by nature, but yeah.
Okay, lightning round on pie here. Pecan pie, yay or nay?
Oh,
Caroline?
definitely yay.
Yay. Jeremy?
Yay, and I usually make a derby pie, which
What's
is
that?
a pecan pie with bourbon and chocolate chips in it.
Okay.
So.
All right. I'm switching my nay to a yay. Anne-Marie?
I'm a yay, but I'm sensitive to corn, and there's corn syrup in a lot of them. But I'm a big maple syrup fan, so pecan pie with maple syrup for sure.
Yes. Okay. And then hands down favorite Thanksgiving pie. Mine is like a mixed berry with a crumble top. Caroline?
Pumpkin, all the way.
Okay. Nice. Do you make your own pumpkin puree, or do you buy the cans? I've heard they're pretty interchangeable. You can't really taste the difference.
I like to make my own pumpkin puree if I can get my hands on some really nice locally grown pumpkins.
Yeah.
I think for me, the canned stuff is very nostalgic. And sometimes for Thanksgiving, really what I want is a taste of nostalgia. But I think that fresh pumpkins are always going to be just a little bit better.
Yeah. Jeremy?
For Thanksgiving, you have to have a little pumpkin pie. But my family has grown very fond of chocolate cream pie. I think we started more at Christmas, but now it's kind of clamored for at Thanksgiving too, so it joins the rotation.
And Anne-Marie?
I have pumpkin. I have to totally agree with that, with insane amounts of whipped cream on top of it. Yep.
Well, let's take a call here. We have Chris calling in from Louisiana. Chris, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Chris from Louisiana.
Hey, what are your thoughts on our dessert convo today?
Oh my gosh, I love desserts so much.
Are you calling
They
in
taste
to
so good.
talk about a specific one?
Yeah, Kanokis.
What are those?
I think they're French. They might be Japanese or something.
Kanokis. You know how to spell that?
Um, I'm a little bit illiterate, so I don't really know. I'm sorry.
All right, Chris. Well, thanks for calling in. We just got an email from Jessica with some accolades for you, Anne Marie. Jessica writes, there are very few things I'm willing to stock at the grocery store, but Bonte Bakery's Harvest Loaf is at the top of that list. As someone who has been gluten and dairy-free since the bad old days of flavorless gluten-free sandwich bread that dissolves as soon as you try to eat it, I have to say Bonte Bakery's gluten-free bread is the absolute best.
Thank you.
Oh, well, we have more baking conversation to go. We also really want to hear your favorite holiday treats to eat. You can call in at 800-639-2211 or email vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. Stay with us.
Thanks for listening to Vermont Edition, where support comes from UVM Cancer Center, sharing that November is Lung Cancer Awareness Month. Learn how lung screening can save lives at vermontcancer.org.
Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Today is the third installment in our three-part November series on holiday cooking and baking. The first week, we discussed appetizers like dips and charcuterie boards. Last week was the main course, and this week is dessert, from apple pie to Yule logs. We're also collecting recipe ideas for desserts to serve at big family meals or winter gatherings this year. We'll be sharing them on vermontpublic.org so that you can refer back to it throughout the winter. You can share your favorite dessert with us by calling 800-639-2211 or emailing vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. Our guests this hour are Jeremy Gully, the lead bread baker at Red Hen Baking in Middlesex, Anne Marie Shea, the owner of Bonte Bakery in Montpelier, a gluten-free business, and Caroline Anders, the co-owner of Atlas Conchas, a Oaxacan-style bakery in Randolph. All right, team, we got a question from a listener named Leslie who is trying to figure out a new filling for her favorite holiday dessert, Bûche de Noël. Leslie writes that she makes it every year, but is seeking a lighter and less sweet alternative to a buttercream filling. Ideally, something stable enough to make a day ahead. Any suggestions? Caroline, I'm looking at you. What are your thoughts? Are you a Bûche de Noël fan? And can you describe them for us to start?
Sure. So a classic bûche de Noël is a rolled up cake, thin chocolate cake usually, with a filling that's about the same thickness. And so then when you roll it up, you have this beautiful log shape, which can be decorated with lots of chocolate, of course. And a lot of people like to put sugared cranberries and sprigs of rosemary, or maybe even make mushroom-shaped meringues and kind of make it look like a proper log.
This is very Great British Bake Off to me.
It is,
Real
yeah.
showstopper.
It is a showstopper because I think that the best bûche de Noëls are super flavorful and delicious and satisfying, but also a really beautiful decorative centerpiece for a holiday table.
So do you have any thoughts about this lighter and less sweet alternative to a buttercream filling that Leslie's wondering about?
Whenever I need to make a filling for a cake that I want to be a bit lighter but still super flavorful, I'll generally start by making a creme pat. And you can do the classic vanilla, which is super flavorful and subtle, or you could totally do a chocolate one. And then if that can firm up in the fridge overnight, the next day you just beat it to loosen it and mix it with an equal part of whipped cream. And the creme pat lends stability, but then the whipped cream lends this lightness, and it usually is firm enough to hold up to do something like a bûche de Noël. And I think it has more flavor than a buttercream because it's more than just the rich butter and the sweet sugar. But I think that, Jeremy, you had some ideas for buttercream as well.
I'm not sure. I think I've made a bûche de Noël once or twice, but for my buttercreams, I would go with a French buttercream. and it's a little trickier to make than an American buttercream, but American is usually just sugar and sugar and what this is slipping here. It's a lot of sugar, and it's just powdered sugar and butter, and that's your buttercream plus chocolate flavoring. But with a French buttercream, you cook the sugar, and you can actually make them quite low in sugar. Sometimes it's almost not really that sweet if you can really cut it back. You have to respect a little bit the process, but and there's sugar in it, but generally the butter kind of stands in, and it's not nearly as sweet. Yeah, and it would be a lot lighter as well, or it could be a lot lighter depending on how you make it. Okay. But that's what I would suggest, and then you would need to make it, I would say, thick enough or with enough body that you could roll it up. I think it would work.
Yeah. I feel like this is one of the big challenges of Thanksgiving, too, is that you eat so much at the main dinner and then you get to dessert and you're so excited about everything, but it's still so heavy and you just ate an entire plate of mashed potatoes. So those lighter dessert options can be a real blessing. Anne-Marie, do you have any ideas along that route of Thanksgiving dessert that perhaps might not sit in the stomach as heavily as a big apple pie? I'm always trying to experiment with how to have less sugar in everything, I feel like. And for sure, my go-to favorite frosting is a Swiss meringue buttercream, which is way less sugar than American buttercream. I don't think I ever would use an American buttercream just because it's so sweet. But I love anything meringue based. It's so stable. It has much less sugar. I love that. But I mean, as far as less sugar with desserts or lighter desserts, I feel like any kind of fruit pie or galette, which is actually my favorite way to do a pie because it's a cheap version. It's a little easier, quicker. Very rustic.
Yeah, really rustic, beautiful. I feel like those are super light, and any kind of fruit, a pear galette with some caramel on top that's one of my favorite things.
That sounds delicious. Yeah. Well, before we slander sugar too much, we love it. We all love it still. And I want to talk cookies. And Caroline, I'm going to you first for this one because I'm realizing we've talked a bit about conchas, but some listeners might not be familiar with what they are, and they're your business's specialty. Can you describe them?
Yeah. So a concha is a traditional Mexican pan dulce, meaning sweet bread. It's a lightly sweetened bun, and we flavor ours with vanilla and anise, which is the traditional Oaxacan flavor profile. And then it's topped with a crunchy sugar cookie topping. So speaking of sugar, the topping makes it super sweet, but the bun itself is only just lightly sweetened. So you have this really nice balance. Conchas are traditionally served for breakfast. A lot of kids like to dip them in hot chocolate, but they also make a wonderful afternoon snack served with some strong black coffee or some café de olla. And they're just delicious, wonderful little gems. They're definitely yeasted breads, but they lean towards pastry with the crunchy topping, and they're satisfying and wonderful.
Who taught you how to make them?
So the conchas that we make in our bakery are my partner Mauricio's family recipe, and he was taught that recipe by his parents. And after he moved to the United States and started working in bread bakeries here, he and his brothers realized that there really were no conchas or pan dulce of any sort available. And so they called up their mom and over quite a few phone conversations tried to get the recipe.
I think that's a dream conversation for a mom.
Oh, sure.
So all my kids are calling me. I'm going to stretch this out.
I'm sure she loved it. Yeah. But, their family bakery, everything is done by hand. They have a trough to mix the dough in rather than any sort of mixer like we're used to using up here. And the oven is a wood-burning oven. And so things aren't really measured in the same way. Here, in our baker, we've got like 4 different scales, in different increments and different capacities. Whereas in Mexico, it's all done by feel and by sight and by that sense of familiarity. So I think there was an element of challenge to get a recipe that could be replicated up here
at a commercial scale.
Absolutely, yeah.
Jeremy, do you ever do that kind of baking of just simply going by feel rather than weighing everything out in precise grams, or is that the way that you prefer to bake?
I do. I enjoy just kind of throwing things together, and I mean it depends on. With bread, at home I like to play around a little bit, but salt is always the critical thing to try to get right. So I have a way to get the right salt right. But
why is that the critical ingredient to get right?
I guess for me, I really don't enjoy bread that's undersalted and of course oversalted, but I don't like it very much. I like the right amount of salt. I think, salt, not that you want it salty, but it really enhances the flavor and brings out all the other flavors. Yeah. So having that kind of correct. And when you don't have enough salt, your bread is just kind of flat, the flavor. So. Yeah. But I would agree with Anne Marie that crostadas or galettes are one of my favorite. When we're going to a friend's house for dinner, it's like, just I've got some pie dough, throw some fruit in it, any kind of fruit you can do, and just kind of tuck it up and throw it in the oven. Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
I love making. I haven't made many sweet galettes, but I've made a lot of savory ones, and I just like that it's a way to bake without feeling like you have to do something perfectly. Like it's supposed to look a little rough around the edges. And I think there's fear among those of us who don't consider ourselves like highly skilled bakers about not doing things precisely right. And Anne-Marie, I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit about the that balance that it seems like you need to find, that Caroline and Jeremy have talked about, between, just doing things by feel and instinct, the way someone might with cooking, and also precise measurements. How do you make that work in your kitchen?
I love the preciseness of baking, but because that you can replicate it because of that preciseness and how the science of how the ingredients work together. It's like one of my favorite things about baking. It feels like stress relieving because it's very, predictable. But I was definitely not trained in any special way, zero training for that stuff. So I don't have, memories of somebody baking in my house, and so I didn't have that feel. That's certainly not something that I came into baking with, but that's kind of the cool thing about it. Anybody can do it. You don't have to have that feel. But then there's quite a bit of feel that comes later, and I do very much enjoy pushing boundaries and seeing what happens and just totally experimenting while very carefully measuring my salt and my yeast and things like that, but playing with all the other elements. Yeah.
I want to go back to the salt thing. I am a huge salt fan, so I'm with you, Jeremy. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about salt in baking sweet things and how it can bring out some of those special flavors. I mean, there's some pairings like salted caramel that are classics, salted dark chocolate. But I wonder if you have any sweet, salty flavor combos that you love to rely on. Jeremy, I'll go to you first since you brought up salt in the first place.
Well, I think for me, the classic sweet, salty combination is a pastry we make at Red Hen, is the kouign-amann.
Yes, and one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a laminated dough, and you laminate sugar into the dough, and then generally it's baked in some sort of form or cup, a ring, and with sprinkled sugar around the edge. So it's actually one of those things where I'm like, wow, that's a lot of sugar. But the result is
they're so
is
good.
Worth it. Yeah,
that feels like one of those pastries though that you don't mess with unless you're a pro. Like it seems so hard to make.
Yes and no. I mean, so traditional kouign-amann, as far as I can understand it, was a big mistake. Like,
Oh, really?
they screwed up a dough as best I can. You read the sort of lore about it. But from what my interpretation is, they screwed up a dough and they're like, what are we going to do with this? And so they are like, all right, let's take it. Let's just put in some bunch of butter and like some salted sugar. So the sugar has some salt in it, and that's where you get the kind of salty caramel. So you laminate the sugar in, but it's got a little bit of salt in it, and that's what it gives it kind of the salted caramel. And then if done well, it caramelizes around the edge. I think Americans have kind of taken it and run with it, and we use our croissant dough for it, and it can be a really lofty laminated dough. But traditionally, it's kind of like a pizza shape, and it's almost like a crostata. But you basically take it and you kind of like bring the edges around. And you generally do that in the form if you're using like a muffin tin or a baking ring. But if you go like there's a boulangerie kouign-amann up in Montreal, and that they make traditional, and it's like kind of they serve it by sort of like a slice of pizza, and it's a ton of butter. Like, it's really buttery, and almost when it's not hot and crunchy out of the oven, I think it gets maybe a little greasy. So I think, we've sort of taken it in the States and sort of dialed that back a little bit. But if you look at some of the traditional recipes from Brittany, it's like almost a 50% roll-in butter. And
wow. Yeah, there are definitely some recipes where I'm like, I don't want to know. I want to eat it, but
Just
I
enjoy
don't
it.
want to know. Yeah. Caroline, do you have any sweet, salty combos that you love to do in the kitchen?
I love sugar. And, I think that there has been a big push towards adding more salt into sweet things, which I think is wonderful. But I've never been one to sprinkle salt on top of a chocolate chip cookie. I think that that's very in right now. And I think that it's a push against avoiding all salt together. Mm-hmm. But for me, the key has always been finding the balance. So in everything that I make that's sweet, there is a little bit of salt. And I think that it's important to have enough that if you stop and think about it, you can taste it and appreciate the savoriness that it adds. But I think that for me, my goal in baking is just to have everything be balanced and to have the salt support the sweetness, keeping it from kind of running away. Mm-hmm.
Now, I want like a salt lick on top of my chocolate chip cookie. It's probably not good for me long term.
That is very fair. And I think a lot of people do want that. And a lot of bakeries have started putting salt on their cookies. And I think that it's nice. It can be nice to have the balance.
Yeah.
But it's never really been my thing because I love sugar too much.
Yeah. I love that. Anne-Marie, where do you fall on this sweet, savory divide?
I'm definitely a savory girl.
Mm-hmm.
I love salt. I love sweet dishes that have salt, like salted caramel, obviously. And one of my favorite things with caramel is like rosemary. I just think that is an incredible combination, salted caramel and rosemary with plums or pears. And I was trying to remember, I just made a tart not long ago, and my husband was like, "Oh, I taste the salt in this, in the crust." And I was like, "Yeah, that's the point." And that's my favorite thing, is to have that savoriness in there. So yeah, I'm pretty firmly in the salty, savory. I mean, I just really like all the flavor combinations together, like a caramel and miso, or I love that contrast. I think it's amazing.
Well, we have lots more holiday baking to get into. I also, when we get back from a short break, I want to hear about some baking fails from each of you, because I know everybody has one. We also have time for some more of your calls and questions. You can call in at 800-639-2211 or email vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. I see some questions rolling into our inbox now, so we'll get to those in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. If you're just joining us, this is the third in our 3-part November series on holiday cooking, and today we're talking desserts. Our guests are Anne-Marie Shea, the owner of Bonté Bakery in Montpelier, Jeremy Gully, the lead bread baker at Red Hen Baking in Middlesex, and Caroline Anders, the co-owner of Atlas Conchas, a Oaxacan bakery in Randolph. All right, we have some questions for the panel. We'll start with Kurt in Windsor, who wants to know if you can substitute Vermont maple syrup or local honey for sugar in most baking recipes. Anne-Marie, I'll throw that one to you.
Yeah, this is something that I love playing with at home, and there isn't a super straightforward answer, but I think, when if you're adding maple syrup instead of cane sugar, you're adding sweetener and you're also adding moisture, so you need to take moisture out of the recipe. And I think the recommendation is like a quarter cup of moisture, a quarter cup of whatever moisture's in the recipe needs to be taken out per cup of maple syrup or honey. If you're using honey, you need to dial it back because honey is super, super sweet, and you're probably going to dial it back more than you think. And then maple syrup's a little more 1-to-1 as far as sweetness and cane sugar. But the other thing that you need to remember is both maple syrup and honey particularly honey, are going to make your baked goods brown a lot faster. So you need to watch them in the oven or bake them at a lower temp. And then experiment because, no recipe is the same when you're making changes like that. It's a big change. And also the other thing that I love to do, which is really easy and you don't have to think about, is use maple sugar because it's a lot more of a 1-to-1. You'll taste the maple in the baked good, but
who's ever sad about that?
That's not a problem.
All right, we got another question from a fellow Michaela who writes, I'm trying to save money and yet provide a dessert contribution this Thanksgiving. I'm not a great cook. In fact, I am notoriously terrible. I want to buy a really nice pie, but I can't afford to buy a whole bunch. Beside ice cream, what can I add to make it beautiful? What can I add to this pie to bring it a little bit further? Any ideas here? And I appreciate this suggestion about, being both a terrible chef or baker, wanting to buy something but not having a ton of money to spend on a really fancy assortment of treats. Does this bring up any ideas for anyone?
I think one of the best things someone can do with a store-bought pie is just throw it in the oven and warm it up a little bit and give it a little bit of life.
Yeah.
Just before it's served. Once the edges start to get a little bit crispy and the center is warm to the touch, it just takes it to the next level. And the oven will probably still be warm from roasting the turkey. So it's a super simple thing that anyone can do to really just make any pie feel special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would add, you can whip whipped cream at home. Make whipped cream at home, put a tiny bit of maple syrup in it, and you have and a little vanilla. You have this delicious, amazing thing that you made at home. And add that on top of a store-bought pie, and you can't go wrong with that.
Those are great ideas.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with the whipped cream because it's who doesn't love whipped cream. I definitely heat up your pies and. For years we made, and we still do, we make our apple pies the day, for pickup the day before Thanksgiving because we're not open on Thanksgiving. And it always made me a little sad because they come out fresh out of the oven. You think, okay, now they're going to sit for a day before they're served. And I was like, I hope they put them in the oven and, heat them through, actually, and really kind of crisp up that crust. So it's delicious. The pumpkin pies, maybe not. Those don't do so well in the oven again. But if you have like a pie crust with a top crust or even a crumb topping, just put it in the oven for 350 for 15 minutes to really heat it through, and it'll taste just like you just baked it right out of the oven.
And it'll do it that quickly, 15 minutes.
Yeah, generally 15 minutes should do it. 15, 20. Just check the edge crust and make sure it's kind of crispy and flaky again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, other Michaela who wrote in, I feel you on feeling self-conscious about your own baking. And I imagine that our guests have had many a baking fail of their own, even though they're now professionals. Do any of you have a moment that comes to mind, a moment of deep darkness when you were trying to put something beautiful together, trying to bake something gorgeous, and it just absolutely failed?
I feel like I have so many.
I know. Being a professional doesn't protect you from failures.
Jeremy, I think I remember hearing a story about your very first loaf of bread being an absolute failure. Do I remember this correctly?
Yes, it was kind of a failure. And it made me laugh when Caroline, you were talking about your husband going to his mom, calling his mom up, and to find out about the conchas. And I did the same thing. I was asked, what got you into baking? And when I was in college, my first year in an apartment, I was like, man, I want to make bread. And so, of course, I went home that summer and was like, hey, Mom, can you teach me how to make bread? So she did. And, kneading, is like the traditional bread, yeasted bread. So once at school, I made my first loaf of bread and I went through the process. And of course, you're not quite sure what you're doing. You're just like the first time. I baked it. I mixed it. I proofed it and put it in the oven. And, there's a prescribed time, 40 minutes or whatever. And I went back to the oven and I checked it, turned it. And I was like, it kind of doesn't look like it's really popping. I was like, well, probably didn't do things quite right. And went back, checked it, and you're supposed to, at this point, it was like, it had been in there for a while. And, you're supposed to pop it out and kind of check that hollow sound that it's supposed to make. And it was like, that is not a hollow sound. It's like a dull thud. So I was like, I didn't know what to do. And it's like, you're getting on an hour. And I was like, well, I put it back in the oven for a little longer, check everything. I was like, I don't know. And so finally it was like, I just got to take this thing out. And I did. And when I when I sliced into it, like there was just an uncooked mass in the middle of it. It was just uncooked dough. And I was like, oh man, I just felt it was just so disheartening. And what actually had happened was the oven in the apartment was broken. And so
okay.
I had put it at,
That's good.
375, 400, whatever it was, and it was heating up to maybe 200, 150,
Did that teach
200.
you to always use an oven thermometer or something like that?
Hadn't even occurred to me to use an oven thermometer. So my second loaf was a lot more successful when we got the oven fixed.
Okay. All right. Well, that is a good tip for all of us. Always check your oven temperature or have a backup check. Caroline, any big baking fails coming to mind after Jeremy has bared his soul about his raw dough?
Yeah. So our bakery is 100% full inclusion. What that means is that we only buy whole wheat berries and we mill everything ourselves. And we use the flour exactly the way it comes out of the mill. No sifting at all. A term for this would be whole wheat, except whole wheat is a little bit of a misnomer these days. And it is very difficult to work with. Most recipes are intended for white flour products, and there's reason for that. White flour is a lot easier to work with. So every flour that we use, it has the whole bran content. And when you're mixing a dough, the little bits of bran act like knives and cut the gluten formation as it's developing. And so we have had a very large number of baking fails because it's just difficult to work with. And for us, a successful recipe is one that uses the correct varietal of wheat that can hold up to whatever treatment we're giving it. But sometimes a type of wheat that we're trying to source for whatever baked good isn't available anymore. And so we have to go back to the drawing board and try some other varietals. And it's very hit or miss. And
what does a miss taste like?
Yeah. So actually, the interesting thing is I think that the flavor is always pretty good.
Okay.
If if the ingredients are high quality.
So is it more the look of
It's
it?
more the look.
Yeah.
And especially for baking something freeform, like any sort of bread, you need it to have that oven spring and to hold its shape. And so if you expect to get a concha and you end up with a pancake, that's not ideal. And even just beyond the aesthetics, like that structure is so integral to how we experience any sort of baked good. So we love everything that we bake because it's a true representation of the ingredients that went into it. But there are some where we taste it and say, okay, that's not going to
Never
work.
again. Never again. Anne-Marie, any baking fails coming up for you?
So many. I feel like, I know we're talking more about desserts today, but it's so hard to not acknowledge gluten-free sourdough baking in baking fails, just because gluten-free is, we have this tiny window of perfectly proofed, and because we don't have the strength that gluten has. If we veer off that very far, we just have exactly what what Jeremy was talking about, just a ball of dough basically at the bottom of a crust. And so I've had many of those with sourdough gluten-free baking, and I've sold one of those before in the very early days, very, very early days when I was selling baked goods out of my home. And that was awful experience to get a picture that somebody sent me of the inside of their bread. I was like, oh my God. That was definitely the most embarrassing baking failure I've ever had. But I feel like a couple months ago, maybe a month or two ago, I made a cake for somebody and hated the way it looked. That's usually when if it's not bread, if it's a dessert or treat or whatever, it's about the way it looks. Just as Caroline was saying. Mm-hmm. And so I just decided to stick it into a big pudding bowl and make a little parfait out of it. And it was fantastic. But yeah, that happens to me a fair bit.
Hearing you all talk reminds me of my biggest baking fail of all. I lived in this tiny apartment in Washington, D.C. with this mini galley kitchen, and I spent hours in there one day making a chocolate babka. And I'd made one before, and I think I had beginner's luck. It was super successful. It was so good. And then the second one was just horrible. It was so flat and dense, and it takes forever to make. And I just was like weeping in a very dramatic way. And my husband had to take me to go get ice cream, but I've never made one since. So this is good. It feels good to admit this to you all. I should try again this winter. Also, quick update. We had gotten a call earlier from Chris in Louisiana talking about gnocchi. And somebody wrote in to say that that's a Italian dessert. There's a dessert version of gnocchi, which is often a savory dish at an Italian restaurant. You might have had it. And it replaces the potato filling with sweet ingredients like sweet potato or pumpkin. So who knew? There you go. I bet lots of people knew, but we did not. All right. Unfortunately, somehow that is all the time that we have for today. We have lots of good baking ideas that we've collected this hour, and we are going to share them on our website, vermontpublic.org, this afternoon. You can also find tips for holiday cooking from our first two shows in this series, one on appetizers, the second on main courses. Again, those are all on vermontpublic.org. Jeremy Gully with Red Hen Baking, Anne-Marie Shea with Bonte Bakery, and Caroline Anders with Atlas Conchas. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. All right. That's all the time we've got. Our show today was directed by Aaliyah Papes. John Aarons is our managing producer. Andrea Lorian, Daniela Fierro, and Aaliyah are our producers. Our call screener today was Rick Barrett, and our theme music is by Myra Flynn. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch up again soon.